In the vast emptiness of space, there was a planet known as Zerath 7. It wasn't like Earth with its blue skies and green forests. Instead, it was a world of endless storms, jagged mountains, and rivers of molten rock. The air was thick with poisonous gases, making it impossible for most living things to survive. But there were beings who called this place home, the Volcari. They were tall, insect-like creatures with shimmering exoskeletons that glowed faintly in the dim light of their dying sun. For centuries, they had lived on Zerath 7, struggling against nature itself just to stay alive. The Volcari weren't always so desperate. Long ago, they had been explorers, builders, and thinkers. Their ancestors traveled across stars and built wonders beyond imagination. But time hadn't been kind to them. Wars, disasters, and environmental collapse had left them stranded on their harsh homeworld. Now they spent their days scavenging for food, hiding from predators, and praying for a miracle. And then one day, they thought their prayers had been answered. A signal came from far away, a message sent by humans. At first, the Volcari couldn't believe it. Humans? Who were they? Were they friend or foe? All they knew was that someone out there had heard their cries for help. For years, the Volcari had broadcasted messages into the void, hoping someone would listen. And now, finally, someone had. On Earth, the discovery of the Volcari's distress call caused both excitement and fear. Humanity had only recently begun exploring deep space, and finding intelligent life was a dream come true. Or so some people thought. Others saw danger. What if the Volcari were hostile? What if they wanted revenge for past wrongs humanity didn't even know about? These questions filled meeting rooms in government buildings around the globe. After much debate, a decision was made. Earth wouldn't send aid workers, scientists, or diplomats. Instead, they would send the Iron Blade. It was a warship, sleek and deadly, designed to destroy anything that posed a threat. Its captain was Ryan Holt, a man known for his cold efficiency and unshakable loyalty to Earth. He wasn't chosen because he was kind or understanding. He was chosen because he got results no matter the cost. Ryan Holt wasn't alone on the ship. With him were dozens of crew members, each playing a vital role. One of them was Dr. Laura Fields, a xenobiologist whose job was to study alien life forms. She had dreamed of meeting extraterrestrials since she was a child, but now that the moment was here, she felt uneasy. Something about sending a warship instead of a research vessel didn't sit right with her. Another key member of the crew was Lieutenant Jake Monroe, the tactical officer. He was young, ambitious, and eager to prove himself. His job was to plan, attack, and defend the ship if needed. Though confident in his abilities, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this mission might not go as planned. Still, he kept his doubts to himself, knowing that questioning orders could get him into trouble. Then there was Chief Engineer Samantha Gray. She was responsible for keeping the Iron Blade running smoothly. Without her, the ship would fall apart. Samantha was practical and level-headed, always focused on solving problems. But even she wondered why Earth had chosen such an aggressive approach. Wasn't it possible to talk before fighting? As the Iron Blade approached Zerath 7, the crew gathered in the main hall. Captain Holt stood at the front, his expression stern. "Listen up," he said, his voice echoing through the room. "This is not a rescue mission. We are here to assess the situation and neutralize any potential threats. If these aliens are dangerous, we will eliminate them. If they're harmless, we'll decide what to do next. Either way, remember this. Our priority is Earth's safety." His words hung heavy in the air. Some crew members nodded, accepting the mission without question. Others exchanged worried glances, unsure if they agreed with Holt's methods. Dr. Fields shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She wanted to speak up, to ask why they weren't trying diplomacy first, but she held her tongue. Speaking out of turn could make things worse. When the Iron Blade entered orbit around Zerath 7, the crew stared out the windows in awe. The planet was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Lightning flashed across dark clouds, illuminating jagged peaks below. Rivers of lava snaked through valleys, glowing orange against the blackened landscape. It looked like a nightmare, yet somehow beautiful. The Vocari wasted no time contacting the humans. Using advanced technology, they projected a hologram onto the bridge of the Iron Blade. The image showed Kale, the leader of the Vocari. He was taller than the others, with intricate patterns etched into his exoskeleton. His voice was deep and resonant, though slightly distorted by the translation software. "Humans," Kyle began, "we have waited long for your arrival. Our world is dying and we need your help. Please tell us you've come to save us." Captain Holt studied the hologram carefully. "We received your distress signal," he replied, "but we require more information before taking action." "Explain your situation." Kyle hesitated, perhaps sensing the tension in Holt's tone. "Our planet is toxic and unstable. We cannot leave, nor can we survive much longer. We ask for relocation to a safer world. In return, we offer knowledge, resources, anything you desire." Holt frowned. This wasn't what he'd expected. He had assumed the Vocari would be hostile, ready to attack at the slightest provocation. Instead, they seemed desperate, weak. Still, appearances could be deceiving. Just because they appeared harmless didn't mean they were trustworthy. Dr. Field stepped forward, unable to stay silent any longer. "Captain, perhaps we should consider their request. If we can help them, shouldn't we try?" Holt turned to her sharply. "Help them?" he snapped. "Do you realize the risk involved? We don't know anything about them. They could be lying. For all we know, they're planning an ambush." "But what if they're telling the truth?" Fields countered. "If we turn them away, we might doom an entire species. Is that something we're willing to live with?" Before Holt could respond, Lieutenant Monroe interrupted. "With respect, sir, maybe we should investigate further. Gather data, analyze their capabilities. That way we'll know exactly what we're dealing with." Holt considered this for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine. Monroe, assemble a team and prepare for surface deployment. Fields, you'll accompany them. Gray, keep the ship ready for anything. But remember this. If anything goes wrong, we're pulling out immediately. No exceptions." As the crew dispersed to carry out their tasks, Dr. Fields felt a mix of hope and dread. Maybe this mission wouldn't end in violence after all, or maybe it would. And she'd have to live with the consequences. Only time would tell. The surface of Zerath 7 was even more hostile up close. The air shimmered with heat, and the ground crunched underfoot like brittle glass. Lieutenant Jake Monroe led the reconnaissance team, his helmet's visor scanning for signs of danger. Behind him trailed Dr. Laura Fields, her suit equipped with sensors to collect data on the environment. Two other crew members, Private Alex Carter and Corporal Mia Torres, brought up the rear, their weapons at the ready. The Vocari had guided them to a designated meeting point, a clearing surrounded by jagged cliffs. There, Kyle awaited them, flanked by several of his kind. Though their insect-like features were unfamiliar, their body language conveyed a mixture of curiosity and caution. Kyle stepped forward, raising one claw-like hand in what appeared to be a gesture of peace. "Welcome," he said, his voice translated through their comms. "We are grateful you have come." Monroe nodded stiffly. "We're here to assess your situation. Show us what you've told us about. Your struggles, your resources, anything that proves your claims." Kale hesitated as if weighing his words carefully. Then he gestured toward the horizon. "Follow me. I will show you." The group moved cautiously across the uneven terrain. Dr. Fields took the opportunity to observe the Vocari closely. Their movements were fluid despite their size, and their glowing exoskeletons seemed almost organic in how they shifted colors under the dim light. She noted subtle differences among them. Some bore scars, while others carried tools or devices strapped to their bodies. These weren't just survivors. They were builders, thinkers, fighters. After walking for nearly an hour, they reached a massive structure half buried in the rocky soil. It looked ancient, its metallic surface corroded and cracked from centuries of exposure to the planet's harsh conditions. Kyle approached it reverently, touching the side with one claw. "This was once our greatest achievement," he explained, a hub of knowledge, technology, and culture. Now it is little more than ruins, but within you may find proof of who we are and why we need your help. Dr. Fields felt a pang of sadness. She imagined Earth reduced to rubble, humanity clinging to survival amidst devastation. Was this what the Vocari had endured? If so, could she blame them for wanting escape? Private Carter, ever vigilant, raised his weapon slightly. "How do we know this isn't a trap?" he asked, his tone sharp. "What if there's something dangerous inside?" Kyle turned to him, his large eyes narrowing slightly. "If we wished you harm, we would not have invited you here. This place holds only memories and perhaps answers." Monroe exchanged a glance with Dr. Fields before nodding. "Let's go in. Stay alert." The entrance yawned open, revealing a dark corridor lined with strange symbols etched into the walls. As they ventured deeper, the temperature dropped noticeably, and the air grew thick with dust. Portable lights illuminated the way, casting eerie shadows on the floor. The Vocari moved confidently, clearly familiar with the layout. Inside, they discovered remnants of a civilization far advanced from anything the humans had anticipated. Broken machines hummed faintly, their mechanisms still active after untold years. Displays flickered with fragmented images, maps of stars, schematics of ships, and records of scientific breakthroughs. Dr. Fields's heart raced as she scanned the information. This wasn't just a colony, it was the heart of an empire. This changes everything," she whispered, turning to Monroe. "They were explorers, innovators. They weren't always victims." Monroe frowned but didn't respond. He was too busy watching the Vocari, trying to gauge whether they posed a threat. Something about the ruins unsettled him, not because they were dangerous, but because they hinted at secrets the aliens hadn't revealed. Cale noticed their unease and stepped closer. "You see now why we ask for aid," he said softly. "We were once great, but pride and conflict destroyed us. We seek not conquest, but salvation. Will you help us rebuild, or will you leave us to perish?" Before anyone could answer, a low rumble shook the ground. Dust rained down from the ceiling and the lights flickered. Corporal Torres grabbed her rifle instinctively. "What was that?" Cale's expression darkened. "The storms. They grow worse every cycle. Come, we must leave before the tunnels collapse." As they hurried back toward the exit, Dr. Fields couldn't shake the feeling that they'd stumbled onto something significant. The Vocari weren't merely refugees. They were survivors of a fallen civilization. What had caused their downfall? And could humanity learn from their mistakes or repeat them? Back outside, the wind howled fiercely, carrying ash and debris. The team climbed aboard their transport shuttle, which hovered nearby. As they lifted off, Dr. Fields stared out the window at the ruins disappearing into the haze. Her mind raced with questions, doubts, and possibilities. When they returned to the Iron Blade, Captain Holt wasted no time demanding a report. Monroe stood rigidly, delivering a concise summary of their findings. Dr. Fields, however, struggled to contain her emotions. "Captain," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I think we've misjudged them. The Vocari aren't primitive scavengers. They're the remnants of an advanced society. Their plea for help isn't based on weakness. It's rooted in survival. If we refuse them, we're condemning an entire species to extinction." Holt listened silently, his face unreadable. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "And what do you propose we do instead?" he asked coldly. "Trust them blindly? Risk Earth's safety for the sake of charity?" "It's not charity," Fields shot back, frustration spilling over. "It's compassion. Isn't that what makes us human?" Holt's gaze hardened. "Compassion doesn't protect us from threats. Until I'm certain these creatures aren't hiding something, our mission remains unchanged, understood?" Fields clenched her fists but said nothing. Arguing further would only make things worse. Instead, she retreated to her quarters, determined to find evidence that might change Holt's mind. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Samantha Gray reviewed the data collected during the expedition. As she sifted through scans of the ruins, something caught her attention. A series of encrypted files buried deep within the alien systems. Intrigued, she called Dr. Fields for assistance. "What is it?" Fields asked, peering over Gray's shoulder at the screen. "I'm not sure yet," Gray admitted, "but it looks important. Maybe classified information they don't want us to see." Together, they worked tirelessly to decrypt the files. Hours passed before fragments of text began appearing. At first, it seemed like gibberish, random numbers, and symbols, but then patterns emerged. Names of planets, dates, descriptions of battles. Slowly, a disturbing picture came into focus. "They weren't just explorers," Gray murmured, her brow furrowing. "They were conquerors. Look at this. It lists dozens of worlds they invaded, civilizations they wiped out." Fields felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying they're responsible for their own destruction? That they brought this on themselves?" Gray nodded grimly. "It looks that way. Whatever happened to them, they earned it." The revelation weighed heavily on both women. If the Vokari had been aggressors in the past, did that justify leaving them to die? Or was redemption possible, even for those who had committed atrocities? Unbeknownst to them, Lieutenant Monroe had overheard part of their conversation. His loyalty to the mission wavered as he grappled with conflicting thoughts. Were the Vokari truly harmless now, or was their history a warning of what they might become again? As tensions mounted aboard the Iron Blade, the crew found themselves divided. Some, like Holt, remained steadfast in their belief that caution outweighed compassion. Others, like Fields and Gray, questioned the morality of abandoning an intelligent species to its fate. And then there were those like Monroe, caught between duty and doubt, unsure of which path to follow. In the end, one thing was certain: the decision they made next would shape not only the future of the Vokari, but also humanity's place in the galaxy. The discovery of the encrypted files changed everything, or at least it should have. Chief Engineer Samantha Gray and Dr. Laura Fields sat in silence, their faces illuminated by the glow of computer screens. The information they had uncovered painted a grim picture of the Vokari's past: invasions, wars, and the systematic destruction of other civilizations. It was hard to reconcile this history with the desperate, broken beings they had met on Zerath 7. Gray broke the silence first. "What do we do with this?" she asked, her voice low. "If Captain Holt finds out, he'll use it as proof that the Vokari are dangerous. He won't hesitate to destroy them." Fields nodded, her mind racing. But does their past really define who they are now? They've suffered enough. Maybe they've learned from their mistakes. Gray sighed, rubbing her temples. "It doesn't matter what I think, or even what you think. If Earth learns about this, they'll see the Vokari as a threat. And once that happens..." She trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. Fields stood up abruptly, pacing the small room. "We can't let that happen. Not yet. We need more time. To understand them. To figure out if they're truly a danger or just victims of their own hubris." Gray hesitated before nodding. "All right. For now, we keep this between us. But we have to be careful. If anyone suspects, we're hiding something." "I know," Fields interrupted, her tone firm. "We'll handle it. Together." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Jake Monroe wrestled with his own doubts. Since overhearing part of Fields and Gray's conversation, he couldn't shake the feeling that the mission was heading down the wrong path. The Vokari had seemed peaceful, too peaceful to warrant annihilation. Yet the encrypted files suggested otherwise. Could a species capable of such atrocities ever change? Monroe found himself drawn to the observation deck, where the desolate surface of Zerath 7 loomed large through the windows. He stared at the jagged landscape, trying to imagine what life must be like for the Vokari. How could anyone survive in such a hostile environment? What would drive them to rebuild after losing so much? As he stood there, lost in thought, Kale's words echoed in his mind. "We seek not conquest, but salvation." Was it possible the Vokari were telling the truth? Or were they simply waiting for an opportunity to strike back? His musings were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw Private Alex Carter approaching. Carter was one of the younger crew members, eager to prove himself, but still green when it came to complex moral dilemmas. "Lieutenant," Carter said, saluting awkwardly, "Captain Holt wants to see you in the briefing room." Monroe nodded, already dreading the meeting. Whatever Holt wanted, it wasn't going to be good news. In the briefing room, Captain Ryan Holt sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Around him were key members of the crew: Monroe, Gray, Fields, and a few others. The atmosphere was tense, thick with unspoken fears and suspicions. Holt wasted no time getting to the point. "I've reviewed the latest reports from your expedition," he began, his voice cold and measured. "And while the ruins are certainly intriguing, they raise serious concerns. According to preliminary analysis, the Vocari were once a highly aggressive species, responsible for the collapse of multiple civilizations." A murmur rippled through the room. Some looked shocked, others exchanged uneasy glances. Holt raised a hand, silencing them. "This confirms my initial assessment," he continued. "The Vocari cannot be trusted. Their current state of weakness does not guarantee future behavior. If allowed to recover, they may pose a significant threat, not only to us, but to countless other worlds." Dr. Fields stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "Captain, you're jumping to conclusions. Just because they made mistakes in the past doesn't mean they're irredeemable. Look at them now. They're struggling just to survive." Holt's eyes narrowed. "Survival breeds desperation, Doctor. Desperation leads to aggression. History has taught us that lesson time and again. Do you really believe we should gamble Earth's safety on the hope that these creatures have changed?" Before Fields could respond, Lieutenant Monroe spoke up. "Sir, with respect, maybe there's another way. Instead of assuming the worst, why don't we gather more evidence? Talk to them further, understand their intentions. Destroying them without fully understanding the situation feels wrong." Holt's gaze shifted to Monroe, his expression icy. "Wrong. Lieutenant, our job is to protect humanity, not play philosopher. Sentimentality has no place in this mission." The room fell silent. No one dared challenge Holt directly, but the tension was palpable. Even Gray, usually quiet and reserved, seemed troubled by the direction the conversation was taking. After a moment, Holt stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Prepare the ship for potential engagement," he ordered. "If the Vocari refuse to cooperate, or if we uncover further evidence of hostility, we will act decisively." Dismissed. As the crew filed out, Monroe lingered behind. When the room was empty except for him and Holt, he cleared his throat nervously. "Captain, I need to say something." Holt turned to face him, his brow furrowed. "This better be important, Lieutenant." "It's about the Vocari," Monroe said, choosing his words carefully. "I think we owe them a chance to explain themselves. Maybe they're not the monsters their history suggests. Maybe they've earned redemption." For a long moment, Holt said nothing. Then he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Let me make one thing clear, Monroe. Redemption is a luxury we can't afford. Humanity's survival comes first, always. If you forget that, you'll regret it." With that, Holt turned and left, leaving Monroe alone in the briefing place. Back. In her quarters, Dr. Fields tried to focus on analyzing the data from the ruins, but her thoughts kept drifting to the Vocari. She couldn't shake the image of Kale standing amidst the wreckage of his once great civilization, pleading for help. Had they truly changed? Or was Holt right to view them as a threat? Her comm device buzzed, startling her. It was Lieutenant Monroe. "Dr. Fields, can we talk?" he asked, his tone urgent. "Of course," she replied. "Where are you?" "Observation deck." When Fields arrived, she found Monroe staring out at Zerath 7, his expression troubled. Without preamble, he told her about his conversation with Holt and his growing belief that the captain was making a grave mistake. "He's not listening," Monroe said bitterly. "He's decided the Vocari are guilty before giving them a fair hearing. That's not justice, it's prejudice." Fields nodded slowly. "I agree. But what can we do?" Holt holds all the power here. Monroe hesitated, then lowered his voice. What if we contact the Vocari ourselves? Warn them about what's coming. Give them a chance to defend themselves or escape. Field's eyes widened in shock. That's mutiny, Jake. If Holt finds out, he won't, Monroe interrupted. Not if we're careful. Look, I don't want to betray Earth, but I also can't sit back and watch innocent lives get destroyed because of fear and ignorance. Fields considered his words, weighing the risks. Finally, she nodded. All right, let's do it. But we'll need help. They decided to approach Chief Engineer Gray next. As someone already privy to the encrypted files, she would understand the stakes. To their relief, Gray agreed to assist, though reluctantly. We're risking everything, she warned. If this goes sideways, none of us will walk away unscathed. We know, Monroe replied grimly. But sometimes doing the right thing means taking a stand, even when it's dangerous. Over the next several hours, the trio worked together to establish a covert communication channel with the Vocari. Using modified equipment from the ship's engineering bay, they transmitted a warning message to Kale. It was brief, but clear. The humans planned to attack. Be prepared. Kale's response came quickly, filled with both gratitude and resolve. Thank you, he wrote. We will fight for our survival, but we do not wish to harm your people. Perhaps there is still hope for peace. As the message ended, Fields felt a mix of dread and hope. They had taken a monumental risk, defying orders and potentially endangering their lives. But deep down she believed it was worth it. Humanity's future depended not only on strength but also on compassion. Little did they know, their actions had set off a chain reaction, one that would test their courage, loyalty, and morality in ways none of them could have imagined. The hours that followed the secret transmission to the Vocari were tense and exhausting. Dr. Laura Fields, Lieutenant Jake Monroe, and Chief Engineer Samantha Gray worked tirelessly to cover their tracks, knowing that any slip-up could expose their betrayal. They deleted logs, rerouted communications, and tampered with surveillance footage, all while pretending to go about their normal duties. The weight of what they had done hung over them like a storm cloud, but none of them regretted it. Not yet. Captain Ryan Holt, however, remained oblivious to the conspiracy brewing under his nose. He was too focused on preparing the Iron Blade for its next move. In the command center, he reviewed tactical plans with Lieutenant Monroe, who struggled to maintain a neutral expression despite the gnawing guilt in his stomach. We'll begin. Orbital bombardment within 48 hours, Holt announced, his voice cold and clinical. If the Vocari attempt to resist, we'll deploy ground forces to neutralize key targets. Monroe forced himself to nod. Understood, sir. Good, Holt replied. And remember, this isn't personal. It's about protecting Earth. If these creatures pose even the slightest risk, we can't afford hesitation. As Holt dismissed him, Monroe clenched his fists behind his back. Protecting Earth? Or playing judge, jury, and executioner? He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but he knew better. Instead, he returned to his quarters where he found Fields waiting for him. How are you holding up? She asked softly, her eyes searching his face. I feel like I'm walking on thin ice, Monroe admitted. Every order I follow makes me hate myself a little more, but if we want to help the Vocari, we have to keep acting like nothing's wrong. Fields nodded grimly. It's working, for now. But how long until someone notices something's off? Before Monroe could respond, there was a knock at the door. Both froze, exchanging nervous glances before Monroe called out, Who is it? It's Gray, came the muffled reply. Can I come in? Relieved, Monroe opened the door. Gray stepped inside, looking pale and anxious. We've got a problem, she said without preamble. Holt just ordered a full diagnostic of the ship's systems. If he finds anything unusual, he'll know we've been tampering with things, Monroe finished, his heart sinking. How much time do we have? A few hours, tops, Gray replied. We need to clean up everything, fast. Without another word, the three sprang into action. They divided tasks. Gray handled technical overrides, Fields erased remaining traces of their covert messages, and Monroe monitored the corridors to ensure no one stumbled upon their operation. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as they worked, each second feeling heavier than the last. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Gray gave a satisfied nod. "It's done. For now, we're safe." But none of them dared to relax. They knew this was only a temporary reprieve. On the surface of Zerath 7, Kyle and the other Vokari leaders gathered in their makeshift council chamber. The message from the humans had shaken them deeply. While grateful for the warning, they couldn't ignore the reality of their situation. Their weapons were outdated, their defenses fragile. Against a warship like the Iron Blade, they stood little chance. "We cannot fight them head-on," Kyle said, addressing the group. "But perhaps we don't need to. Remember the ruins, the ancient technology buried beneath the sands? Some of it may still be functional. If we can reactivate those systems, we might stand a chance." One of the elders, a frail but wise Vokari, named Zin, spoke up. "Even if we succeed, will it truly matter? These humans view us as monsters. Can we blame them given our history?" Kale hesitated before responding. "Our past does not define us, not anymore. We are not the conquerors we once were. We are survivors. And if fighting is the only way to prove ourselves worthy of life, then so be it." With renewed determination, the Vokari mobilized. Teams scoured the ruins, digging through layers of dust and debris to uncover forgotten machines. Others worked tirelessly to repair damaged equipment, cobbling together whatever tools they could salvage. It was slow, painstaking work, but every small success fueled their resolve. Back aboard the Iron Blade, tensions continued to mount. Captain Holt grew increasingly suspicious, though he couldn't pinpoint why. Something about the behavior of his crew felt off. He began questioning everyone individually, probing for inconsistencies in their stories. When it was Monroe's turn, he braced himself for the worst. Holt stared at him intently, his sharp eyes missing nothing. "Lieutenant, you've been acting strangely lately," Holt said bluntly. "Care to explain?" Monroe swallowed hard, forcing himself to remain calm. "Just tired, sir. All this preparation has been stressful." Holt studied him for a moment longer before nodding. "Very well, but let me make one thing clear. If I discover anyone undermining this mission, there will be consequences." "Yes, sir," Monroe replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. After the meeting, Monroe sought out Fields and Gray to warn them. "He's on to us," he said quietly. "We need to be careful. One wrong move, and we're finished." "We'll manage," Gray assured him, though her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted a wrench. "Just stay focused." As the countdown to the attack approached, the Vokari made a breakthrough. Deep within the ruins, they discovered a cache of dormant weapons, ancient but powerful. With some effort, they managed to bring them online, integrating them into their defenses. Though crude compared to modern human technology, the weapons were enough to give them hope. Kale contacted the humans again, this time openly. His holographic image appeared on the bridge of the Iron Blade, startling the crew. "Humans," he began, his tone firm but respectful. "We thank you for your warning. However, we will not surrender. Our ancestors' sins do not bind us, forever. If you choose to attack, we will defend ourselves, but we seek no conflict. Please reconsider your actions." Captain Holt scowled at the projection. "So they think they can intimidate us?" he muttered. Then, raising his voice, he addressed Kale directly. "Your defiance only confirms my suspicions. You are a threat, and threats must be eliminated." As the transmission ended, Dr. Fields stepped forward, her face flushed with desperation. "Captain, please, listen to reason. Attacking them won't solve anything. They're trying to communicate to show they've changed." Holt rounded on her, his patience wearing thin. "Enough, Doctor. Your interference ends now. This is a military operation, not a debate club. Follow orders or step aside." Fields opened her mouth to protest further, but stopped herself. Arguing would accomplish nothing. Instead, she turned and left the bridge, her mind racing. There had to be another way. Later that night, she met secretly with Monroe and Gray in the engineering bay. "We can't let this happen," she whispered urgently. "If Holt launches the attack, innocent lives will be lost, including ours if he discovers the truth." "What do you suggest?" Gray asked, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "We've already pushed our luck too far." Fields hesitated before speaking. "We disable the ship, temporarily, of course, just long enough to buy the Vakari time to prepare. Once Holt realizes what's happening, maybe he'll see reason, or at least delay the assault." Monroe frowned. "That's risky. If we fail, we're dead. But if we succeed," Fields countered, "we save lives. Isn't that worth it?" After a long pause, Gray nodded reluctantly. "All right, let's do it." Working quickly and quietly, the trio sabotaged critical systems throughout the ship. Shields flickered offline, engines sputtered, and communication channels went dark. Alarms blared as chaos erupted on the bridge. "What's going on?" Holt barked, his face red with fury. "It's sabotage," one of the engineers shouted. "Someone's tampered with the systems." Holt spun around, his gaze locking onto Monroe, who stood nearby. "You," he growled. "This is your doing, isn't it?" Before Monroe could respond, Fields stepped forward. "No, Captain. It was all of us. We couldn't stand by and watch you destroy an entire species without giving them a chance." For a moment, Holt looked as though he might explode. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You fools. Do you really think this changes anything? Even if you delay, us will fix the damage, and when we do..." He trailed off, leaving the threat unspoken. Despite the danger they now faced, Fields felt a strange sense of relief. They had done what they believed was right, regardless of the cost. Whether it would be enough to change the outcome remained to be seen, but for the first time in days she allowed herself to hope. The sabotage aboard the Iron Blade plunged the ship into chaos. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and crew members scrambled to repair the damage. Captain Ryan Holt stood on the bridge, his face a mask of fury as he barked orders. "Get the systems back online, now," he roared, "and find out who's responsible for this." Dr. Laura Fields, Lieutenant Jake Monroe, and Chief Engineer Samantha Gray watched from the shadows, their hearts pounding. They had taken a massive risk, and now they waited to see if it would pay off. For a moment, the ship was silent except for the hum of failing machinery and the panicked voices of engineers rushing to fix the problems. Holt's glare swept across the room, finally settling on Monroe. "Lieutenant," he growled, "you will oversee the repairs personally. If I discover you're involved in this mess, there will be consequences." Monroe nodded stiffly, hiding the guilt that gnawed at him. "Understood, sir." As the crew worked frantically, the Vakari on Zirath 7 seized the opportunity. Kale rallied his people, directing them to activate the ancient weapons they had unearthed. The machines groaned to life, their power surging through long dormant circuits. Though outdated, they were still formidable and more than capable of defending against an attack. Meanwhile, back on the ship, tensions simmered among the humans. Some crew members whispered about mutiny, questioning whether Holt's orders were justified. Others remained loyal to the captain, convinced that the mission's goals outweighed any moral qualms. The division grew deeper with each passing hour. Dr. Fields tried to capitalize on the unrest. She moved quietly through the corridors, speaking to anyone who would listen. "We can't let fear dictate our actions," she urged. "The Vakari are not monsters. They've suffered enough. Can't we give them a chance?" Her words resonated with some, but fell flat with others. Private Alex Carter, one of Holt's staunchest supporters, confronted her angrily. "You're putting Earth at risk," he snapped. "What happens when they rebuild? Will you still feel sorry for them then?" Fields met his gaze steadily. "I'm not asking you to trust them blindly. I'm asking you to think, to consider whether destroying them is truly the right thing to do." Carter didn't respond, but his scowl deepened. He stormed off, leaving Fields alone with her thoughts. She knew winning over the entire crew was impossible, but even swaying a few minds might make a difference. Hours passed, and slowly the ship began to stabilize. Engineers managed to restore partial power to the engines and shields, though the communication systems remained offline. Holt paced the bridge like a caged animal, his frustration evident. Finally, he turned to Monroe. "Status report." "The main systems are functional again," Monroe replied cautiously. "But full capacity will take longer." Holt's eyes narrowed. "Longer? How much longer?" "At least 12 hours, Monroe lied, buying time for the Vocari. In reality, most repairs were nearly complete. Holt clenched his jaw but didn't argue. Instead, he issued new orders. "Prepare a strike team. We'll deploy ground forces immediately. If the Vocari think they can delay us, they're mistaken." Monroe felt a chill run down his spine. Ground combat meant direct confrontation and bloodshed. He exchanged a glance with Fields, who looked equally alarmed. There was no turning back now. On Zerath 7, the Vocari braced for battle. Kyle addressed his people, his voice steady despite the storm raging around them. "This may be our final stand," he said, "but remember, we fight not for conquest but for survival, for the future of our species." The Vocari responded with a mixture of determination and resignation. They armed themselves with whatever weapons they could salvage, knowing the odds were stacked against them. Still, they refused to surrender without a fight. When the human shuttles descended from orbit, the Vocari sprang into action. Hidden turrets fired bursts of energy, forcing the landing parties to scatter. Explosions lit up the sky as both sides exchanged fire, the air thick with smoke and ash. Lieutenant Monroe led the ground assault, his mind torn between duty and doubt. As he advanced, he caught glimpses of the Vocari fighting back, not with hatred but with desperation. They weren't monsters, they were survivors, just like humanity itself. Private Carter shouted from behind cover, reloading his rifle. "There, dug in tight, we need backup." Monroe hesitated, his finger hovering over the trigger. Could he really order his men to slaughter these beings, or was there another way? Before he could decide, Dr. Fields appeared beside him, having joined the operation under the guise of providing medical support. "Jake," she whispered urgently, "we can't keep doing this. Look at them. They're not attacking out of malice. They're protecting their home." Monroe glanced at her, then at the battlefield. The Vocari were outnumbered and outgunned, yet they fought with everything they had. His resolve hardened. "All right," he muttered. "Let's try to negotiate." He raised his hands, signaling a ceasefire. Reluctantly, his team obeyed, lowering their weapons. Across the battlefield, the Vocari paused, wary but curious. Kyle stepped forward, his glowing exoskeleton shimmering in the dim light. "Why have you stopped?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "We don't want to fight," Monroe replied, his tone sincere. "We came here because we feared you, but maybe we were wrong. Maybe there's another way." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then Kyle nodded slowly. "If you seek peace, we are willing to talk. But know this. We will not surrender our right to live." Field stepped forward, addressing both sides. "This doesn't have to end in violence. Let's work together. Find a solution that benefits everyone." Her words sparked murmurs among the humans and Vocari alike. Slowly, weapons were lowered, and tentative steps toward negotiation began. Back aboard the Iron Blade, Captain Holt monitored the situation from the bridge. When reports came in of the ceasefire, his anger flared. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "Who authorized negotiations?" Monroe's voice crackled over the comm link. "Sir, continuing the attack serves no purpose. The Vocari aren't a threat, they're victims of circumstance. Give them a chance and maybe we can avoid further bloodshed." Holt slammed his fist against the console. "Victims? They're invaders. Murderers. And you expect me to trust them? They've changed," Monroe insisted. "Their past doesn't define them anymore. Ours shouldn't either." Holt seethed, torn between rage and reluctant acknowledgement. The truth was undeniable. The Vocari had shown no signs of aggression beyond self-defense. Yet trusting them felt like gambling with Earth's safety. As the standoff continued, Chief Engineer Gray made a bold move. she broadcast a message, not to Holt but directly to Earth. Using the ship's emergency channel, she transmitted footage of the Vocari's plight, along with evidence of their peaceful intentions. "This is Chief Engineer Samantha Gray," she said, her voice steady. "We have misjudged the Vocari. They are not our enemies. Please reconsider your orders." The transmission reached Earth hours later, sparking debates among government officials. Public opinion shifted as images of the devastated planet and its resilient inhabitants spread across news networks. For the first time, humanity questioned whether destruction was truly the answer. On Zerath 7, the fragile truce held. Humans and Vocari sat together in the ruins, sharing stories and hopes for the future. It wasn't perfect. Trust wouldn't come easily. But it was a start. Captain Holt watched from afar, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke into the comm link. "Fine," he said gruffly. "Negotiations can proceed. But if this goes wrong, the responsibility lies with all of you." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acceptance. And for now, that was enough. The negotiations between humans and Vocari stretched late into the night. Both sides sat in the shadow of the ancient ruins, their faces illuminated by flickering lights powered by scavenged technology. The air was thick with tension, but also a cautious hope. For the first time, the two species were speaking not as enemies but as potential allies. Dr. Laura Fields acted as the primary mediator, her calm demeanor helping to bridge the gap between human emotions and Vocari logic. "We need to understand each other," she said, addressing both groups. "The past can't be changed, but the future is still ours to shape." Kyle nodded slowly, his glowing exoskeleton casting an eerie light over the group. "We have made mistakes, terrible ones, but we are not those beings anymore. We seek only to survive, to rebuild what was lost," Lieutenant Jake Monroe added, "and we're here because we feared you might become those beings again. But now, I think we see that fear was misplaced." Captain Ryan Holt remained distant, observing the proceedings from afar. Though he hadn't joined the discussions, his presence loomed large, a reminder of the authority he still held. He listened intently, weighing every word spoken. His expression gave nothing away, but inside, doubts gnawed at him. Had he misjudged the situation? Was this truce truly the right course of action? Chief Engineer Samantha Gray worked quietly behind the scenes, ensuring the ship's systems remained stable while monitoring Earth's response to her earlier transmission. When news finally arrived, it came as a shock to everyone aboard the Q. Iron Blade Night Earth had issued a new directive: stand down. The decision had been influenced by public outcry and mounting evidence supporting the Vocari's peaceful intentions. While some officials remained wary, others argued that humanity's survival depended not on domination but on cooperation. For better or worse, the mission parameters had shifted. Gray relayed the update to Holt, who received it with stony silence. After a long pause, he muttered, "So be it." Then, turning to Monroe, he ordered, "Inform the crew. Our role here has changed." When the announcement reached the negotiating table, a wave of relief washed over the humans and Vocari alike. Kyle rose to his full height, his voice resonating with gratitude. "Your people have shown wisdom," he said. "We will honor this trust. Together, perhaps we can find a way forward." The next few days were spent drafting agreements and laying the groundwork for collaboration. The Vocari offered access to their ancient archives, which contained knowledge far beyond anything humanity had achieved. In return, the humans promised aid in stabilizing Zerath 7's environment and relocating the Vocari to safer worlds if possible. Dr. Fields threw herself into the work, fascinated by the wealth of information uncovered in the ruins. She marveled at the ingenuity of the Vocari ancestors, whose advancements rivaled Earth's greatest achievements. Yet she couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness when she read accounts of their downfall, a cautionary tale of hubris and greed. Monroe found himself reflecting on the mission's original purpose. What if they had followed Holt's initial plan? How many lives would have been lost unnecessarily? He realized now that strength wasn't measured by force alone. It was also about compassion, understanding, and the courage to choose peace over violence. Even Captain Holt seemed to soften, though he kept his emotions tightly guarded. As the HFY crew prepared to depart Zerath 7, he approached Fields privately. "You were right," he admitted gruffly. "I let fear cloud my judgment. If you hadn't stood up to me..." Fields smiled faintly. "It wasn't just me, sir. Everyone played a part, including you. You could have ignored Earth's orders, but you didn't." Holt nodded, his gaze distant. "Let's hope history remembers this as a lesson learned, not a mistake repeated." As the Iron Blade lifted off from Zerath 7, its crew watched the planet shrink into the distance. The jagged landscape and swirling storms faded into memory, replaced by the vast emptiness of space. For many, the journey home felt bittersweet. They had accomplished something remarkable, yet the scars of conflict lingered. Back on Earth, the story of the Vokari spread rapidly, sparking debates about humanity's place in the universe. Some hailed the mission as a triumph of diplomacy. Others criticized the risks taken by the crew. Dr. Fields became a reluctant celebrity, praised for her role in averting disaster. Lieutenant Monroe earned recognition for his leadership during the ground assault, though he preferred to stay out of the spotlight. Chief Engineer Gray quietly returned to her duties, content knowing she had done the right thing. Captain Holt, however, faced scrutiny. His initial approach had nearly led to catastrophe, and while he had ultimately followed orders, questions remained about his judgment. Facing inquiries from Earth's governing bodies, he accepted responsibility without complaint. "I made a mistake," he told them, "but I learned from it. That's all any of us can do." The Vokari, meanwhile, began rebuilding their society with renewed purpose. With Earth's assistance, they developed technologies to mitigate the effects of their harsh environment. Plans were drawn up for colonies on neighboring planets, offering the promise of a brighter future. Cale often reflected on the events that had brought them to this point. "We owe much to those humans," he told his people. "Not because they saved us, but because they reminded us of who we can be." Months later, as the Iron Blade docked, at Earth's orbital station, the crew disembarked one by one. Families reunited, reporters swarmed, and celebrations erupted across the globe. Yet amidst the fanfare, there was a quiet sense of reflection. Dr. Fields stood on the observation deck gazing at the blue-green orb below. Humanity had taken its first step toward becoming something greater, not through conquest but through connection. She thought of the Vokari and their struggles, their resilience, their hope. Perhaps, she mused, the real victory wasn't survival. It was learning to coexist. Lieutenant Monroe joined her, leaning against the railing. "Do you think we'll ever go back?" he asked. "Probably," Fields replied, "but next time it won't be with weapons. It'll be with open hands and open minds." They shared a smile, knowing they had played a small part in changing the course of history. Below them, Earth turned silently in its orbit, a fragile yet enduring beacon of life in the cosmos. And somewhere, light years away, the Vokari looked to the stars with newfound optimism. Their chapter of destruction had ended, but another, filled with possibility, had only just begun.